The Mead of Poetry, Odin's Theft of Inspiration. Part 1. Brewing Wisdom. Who made this magical drink? The story of the Mead of Poetry begins not with Odin, but with the resolution of a great cosmic conflict. After the Aesir and Vanir gods concluded their war, they sealed their peace treaty in a most unusual and potent way. All the gods gathered, spit into a single vat, and from this collective act, a being named Kvasir was formed. Kvasir was no ordinary man. He embodied the wisdom of all the gods combined, possessing an unparalleled understanding of the universe. Every question put to him could be answered with profound insight, making him the wisest of all beings. His mere existence was a testament to the power of shared knowledge and divine understanding, a living embodiment of peace and wisdom. Kvasir traveled throughout the 9 realms, generously sharing his vast knowledge with anyone who sought it. His gentle nature and boundless wisdom made him a beloved figure, but also a target. One day, Kvasir visited the home of 2 dwarf brothers, Fjalar and Galar, known for their cunning and malevolence. The dwarves, envious of Kvasir's wisdom and perhaps seeking to possess it for themselves, plotted a sinister deed. They lured Kvasir into a secluded spot and without mercy murdered him. This act of treachery was the first step in the creation of the Mead of Poetry, transforming divine wisdom into a tangible, drinkable form. After their heinous crime, Fjalar and Galar collected Kvasir's blood, mixing it with honey in 3 large vats, Odin, Sun, and Odrir. Through a dark and ancient ritual, they fermented this mixture, transforming Kvasir's very essence into the Mead of Poetry. This magical drink had an extraordinary property. Anyone who consumed it would instantly gain the gift of poetic inspiration, becoming a skald or scholar capable of crafting magnificent verses and speaking with unparalleled eloquence and wisdom. The dwarves, rather than using this power for good, hoarded it, keeping the mead a secret from the other gods and mortals, selfishly desiring its power for themselves. The creation of the Mead of Poetry was thus born from both divine unity and brutal murder. The initial act of the gods spitting into a vat symbolized the collective wisdom and experience that formed Kvasir. His subsequent demise at the hands of the dwarfs and the transformation of his blood into the mead represents the idea that even profound wisdom can be brutally taken and repurposed. It suggests that true inspiration might sometimes arise from dark or unexpected origins, a potent blend of the sacred and the profane. The mead was not just a drink, it was concentrated divine wisdom, now tainted by a violent act. The 3 vats, Odin, Sun, and Odrir, held not just a magical liquid, but the very essence of inspiration, art, and knowledge. These names themselves hold significance, hinting at the profound nature of their contents. Odin suggests a vessel, a container for something precious. Sun could imply sound or song, connecting directly to the poetic power it bestowed. Odrir is perhaps the most evocative, hinting at mind-stirrer or inspiration maker, perfectly describing the mead's effect. The dwarfs understood the immense value of what they possessed, even if their acquisition was through foul means. They guarded it jealously, knowing its power could elevate any being to godlike poetic prowess. Thus, the Mead of Poetry, an embodiment of divine wisdom, was brought into existence through a chain of events starting with peace, leading to murder, and culminating in a magical brew. It was a potent substance, brimming with the very essence of knowledge and artistic skill, but its creation story was steeped in violence and deception. This magical drink, containing the spirit of Kvasir, was now ready to play a central role in the sagas of the gods and mortals, though not without further twists and turns involving trickery and daring theft. Its initial making set the stage for one of the most famous tales of divine acquisition. Part 2. Giants and Trickery. How was it guarded? The two dwarf brothers, Fjalar and Galar, reveled in their possession of the Mead of Poetry, but their malicious nature soon led them to another heinous act. They invited a giant named Gilling and his wife to visit them. True to their treacherous character, the dwarves lured Gilling out onto the sea and capsized his boat, causing him to drown. They then returned to his distraught wife, feigning sorrow, and cruelly dropped a millstone on her head when she looked for her husband, crushing her instantly. These acts of unprovoked violence would have significant consequences for the dwarves and the precious mead they guarded. The son of Gilling and his wife was a powerful and fearsome giant named Suttungr. When he discovered the brutal murder of his parents, Suttungr was filled with an unquenchable rage. He immediately set out to find the dwarf brothers, demanding retribution for their heinous crimes. The dwarves, knowing they were no match for the giant's wrath, trembled in fear. Suttungr seized them and, in his fury, prepared to execute them. This was a desperate moment for Fjalar and Galar, as they faced the consequences of their wicked deeds. In their terror, the dwarves offered Suttungr a desperate bargain to save their lives. They revealed their most prized possession, the Mead of Poetry, and offered it to him as payment, a wergild for the lives of his parents. Suttungr, though still furious, recognized the immense value of the magical brew. He understood that this was no ordinary payment. The mead held power beyond any gold or treasure. He accepted the offer, seeing it as a fitting compensation for his loss, a means to gain something truly extraordinary from the dwarves: treachery. Suttungr took possession of the 3 vats, Bone, Sun, and Othurir, filled with the precious mead. He transported them to his mountain fortress, a formidable stronghold deep within Jotunheim, the land of the giants. Determined to protect this invaluable treasure, Suttungr entrusted its guardianship to his daughter, Gunnlöð. He instructed her to remain constantly vigilant, never leaving the mead unattended, for he knew that many would desire its power. This arrangement placed the mead under the strictest security, guarded by a giantess within an impregnable mountain. Gunnlöð took her role as guardian very seriously. She resided within the mountain chamber where the mead was stored, dedicating herself entirely to its protection. Her presence was a formidable deterrent, combining the natural strength and resilience of a giantess with the unwavering loyalty to her father. The mead was thus locked away, not just by physical barriers, but by the dedicated vigilance of its keeper. No one could hope to acquire it without first overcoming Gunnlöð and penetrating the giant's mountain stronghold, a task that seemed impossible for any god or mortal. The giants, often portrayed as brutish and destructive, also possessed a certain cunning and appreciation for valuable things. Suttungr's decision to accept the mead as compensation, rather than simply slaying the dwarves, showed a shrewd understanding of its worth. His careful measures to guard it, placing it with his daughter in a secure location, highlighted his desire to keep this source of wisdom and inspiration within his own family's grasp. The Mead of Poetry, born of collective divine wisdom and then human malice, was now a giant's hoard, waiting for its next, most daring thief. Part 3. Odin the Thief. What risks did he take for words? The fame of the Mead of Poetry eventually reached Asgard, sparking the interest of Odin, the All-Father. As the god of wisdom, poetry, and war, Odin deeply understood the immense value of such a potent source of inspiration. He desired this mead not for selfish gain or mere pleasure, but to share its poetic gifts with gods and mortals alike elevating their minds and spirits. Obtaining it, however, meant facing the formidable giant Suttungr and his vigilant daughter, Gunnlod, a challenge that required guile and unparalleled daring. Odin embarked on his perilous quest, traveling disguised as a common farmhand named Bolvergr, which means evildoer or troublemaker, a name hinting at the deceptive nature of his plan. He arrived at a field where 9 thralls, or farm laborers, were mowing hay. He noticed their scythes were dull and offered to sharpen them. With a magical whetstone, he sharpened their blades to an incredible keenness. The thralls, amazed by the results, all clamored to buy the whetstone. Odin, in a cunning move, threw the whetstone into the air. As the thralls scrambled to catch it, they accidentally turned their sharpened scythes on each other, killing all 9 of them. This cleared the way for the next stage of his plan, eliminating any potential witnesses or obstacles. With the thralls eliminated, Odin approached Baugi, Suttungr's brother, who owned the farm and was now without laborers. Odin, still disguised as Bolvergr, offered to do the work of all 9 thralls for Baugi, but in return he demanded a single drink of Suttungr's Mead of Poetry. Baugi, unaware of Bolvergr's true identity, readily agreed to the arrangement as he desperately needed help on his farm. He promised to intercede with his brother Suttungr to secure the promised reward. This clever trick allowed Odin to gain a foothold, earning his way closer to his ultimate goal without revealing his true intentions. After a long and arduous summer of labor, Odin fulfilled his part of the bargain. He reminded Baugi of his promise, and together they went to Sungr's mountain stronghold to claim the mead. As expected, Suttungr adamantly refused to share his precious brew, guarding it fiercely as he always had. He was not swayed by his brother's plea, reiterating that the mead was his and would remain so. This refusal did not deter Odin. It merely signaled the necessity of a more direct and deceptive approach, one that would require more than just persuasion. Odin then produced an auger, a large drill, and instructed Baugi to bore a hole through the solid rock of the mountain into the chamber where the mead was kept. Baugi, perhaps still feeling obligated to Bolvergr for his summer's work, reluctantly complied. He drilled into the mountain, believing he had pierced the rock. When he reported his success, Odin tested the hole and found it was not fully through. He realized Baugi had tried to trick him. After another command, Baugi finally drilled a complete passage through the mountain. Once the tunnel was complete, Odin transformed himself into a serpent and slithered through the narrow passage Baugi had drilled. As he passed through, Baugi, realizing he had been deceived, tried to strike him with the auger, but it was too late. Odin, in his serpent form, had already entered the inner chamber of the mountain. He shed his disguise and stood before Gunnlod, the giantess guardian. His daring had brought him face to face with his objective, having overcome physical barriers and giant trickery to reach this point. Part 4. The Flight of the Eagle. Did the gods almost lose it? Inside the mountain chamber, Odin, now revealed in his divine form, or at least a highly persuasive guise, confronted Gunnlod, the dedicated guardian of the Mead of Poetry. Rather than resorting to brute force, Odin chose a path of seduction and cunning. He spent 3 nights with Gunnlod, engaging her in conversation, charming her with his wisdom, and perhaps sharing secrets of the universe. During these 3 nights, he managed to win her trust and affection, gradually eroding her resolve to guard the mead so fiercely. This was a testament to his persuasive powers, his ability to manipulate not just events but emotions. After 3 nights, when Gunnloth was thoroughly enamored and perhaps swayed by Odin's charisma, he made his request: 3 sips of the mead of poetry. Having fallen for the Allfather, Gunnloth, against her father's strict instructions, granted his wish. This was the moment Odin had meticulously planned for, the culmination of his intricate deception. She presented him with the vats, trusting him, unaware of his true intent to completely drain them. Her love or infatuation became the key that unlocked the precious wisdom she was meant to protect. Odin, however, did not take mere sips. With each sip, he drained an entire vat of the precious mead. He drank from Both, then Son, and finally Othrid, emptying all 3 containers of the magical brew. In a matter of moments, the entire supply of the Mead of Poetry, the concentrated wisdom of Kvasir, was consumed by the Allfather. He had successfully acquired the coveted mead, but now faced the monumental challenge of escaping Suttungur's mountain fortress with his ill-gotten gains, for the giant would surely be enraged upon discovering the theft. As soon as he had consumed the mead, Odin transformed himself into a magnificent eagle. This majestic form allowed him to make a swift escape, soaring out of the mountain chamber through the same hole Baugi had drilled, now widened by his serpentine passage. The flight of the eagle was not just an escape, it was a powerful symbol of his triumph, carrying the essence of poetic inspiration high above the earth, towards Asgard. His departure was swift and dramatic, a testament to his cunning and transformative abilities. Suttungur, realizing he had been duped and robbed of his most prized possession, was consumed by a furious rage. Discovering the empty vats and the trickery, he immediately understood what had happened. He also transformed himself into a massive eagle and set off in hot pursuit of Odin. The chase through the skies was epic, a high-stakes aerial battle between 2 powerful beings. Suttungur, driven by vengeance, was determined to reclaim his stolen treasure, even if it meant tearing Odin out of the sky. The pursuit was relentless, with Suttungur gaining on Odin, threatening to catch the Allfather before he could reach the safety of Asgard. The gods in Asgard, seeing Odin's predicament and the giant's furious pursuit, quickly prepared for his arrival. They placed large vats just inside the walls of Asgard, ready to receive the precious liquid. Odin, nearing the gates of Asgard, regurgitated the mead of poetry into these waiting vats, ensuring its safe delivery to the gods. In his haste to escape Suttungur, Odin spewed some of the mead out of his rear end. This portion, considered inferior, fell to Midgard and became known as the "rhymester's share," or bad poet's mead, available to anyone who happened upon it, but offering lesser quality inspiration. The main bulk, however, was safely deposited in Asgard, where it would forever reside, a source of divine inspiration. The gods rejoiced, for the mead of poetry was now theirs, a symbol of their triumph and a gift for all future poets. Part 5. Gift to Poets. Why is inspiration divine? With the mead of poetry safely deposited in Asgard, Odin now held the ultimate source of poetic inspiration. He did not hoard it for himself, but rather distributed it among the gods and worthy humans. This act solidified Odin's role not just as the Allfather, but as the patron of poetry and wisdom. The mead became a divine conduit, allowing those who partook of it to tap into a wellspring of eloquence, insight, and artistic genius. This gifting was a fundamental step in shaping the creative landscape of the 9 realms. The ability to craft beautiful and meaningful verse, to speak with profound insight, and to tell captivating stories was considered a divine gift. In Norse society, skalds or court poets held a revered position. Their ability to remember and recite long sagas, to compose intricate praise poems for their lords, and to weave tales of gods and heroes was seen as a manifestation of divine favor. The Mead of Poetry explained the source of this extraordinary talent, linking mortal artistic expression directly to the wisdom of the gods and the sacrifice of Kvasir. Inspiration in this context was not merely a human endeavor, but a sacred connection to the divine. When a poet drank the mead, they were essentially consuming the concentrated wisdom of all the gods, as embodied by Kvasir. This elevated their craft beyond mere skill. It became an act of channeling divine knowledge and understanding. The intricate metaphors, complex meter, and profound themes found in skaldic poetry were thus explained as direct infusions from Asgard, a testament to the mead's power. The sharing of the mead meant that anyone, god or mortal, deemed worthy by Odin, could achieve unparalleled poetic prowess. This made inspiration a gift, something bestowed from above, rather than solely an innate human trait. It suggested that while talent might exist, true genius, the kind that moves mountains and inspires generations, required a touch of the divine. This belief added a spiritual dimension to artistic creation, making poets not just entertainers, but conduits for divine truth. Even the rhymester's share, the portion of the mead Odin accidentally dropped, held significance. While considered inferior, it still offered a degree of inspiration to those who found it. This explains why some poets might be competent, but not truly exceptional. They received only a diluted version of the divine gift. It emphasized the purity and power of the main mead, reinforcing the idea that the greatest inspiration comes directly from the gods, carefully dispensed by Odin. The Mead of Poetry transformed the understanding of creativity. It showed that inspiration was a tangible, consumable essence, born from a unique series of events involving peace, treachery, and cunning. By distributing it, Odin ensured that the wisdom of Kvasir would continue to flow, not just in Asgard, but throughout the realms, enriching the lives of all who could appreciate the power of words. The gift of the mead underscored the profound connection between the divine and human creativity, making poetry a truly sacred art. Part 6, Mead and Madness, is creativity a sweet intoxication. The consumption of the mead of poetry bestows not just wisdom and eloquence, but also a profound and often overwhelming surge of creative energy. This influx of divine inspiration can be likened to a form of intoxication, a sweet madness that grips the poet. Just as alcoholic mead can alter perception and release inhibitions, the mead of poetry opens the mind to new vistas of thought and expression, sometimes pushing the boundaries of conventional understanding and sanity. The power it grants is immense, and with such power often comes a touch of the sublime and the unpredictable. This intoxication isn't necessarily negative. It is the state where true genius often flourishes. It's the moment when ideas flow freely, connections are made where none existed before, and the poet becomes a vessel for something greater than themselves. The madness refers to this altered state of consciousness, a departure from the mundane and rational, allowing for imaginative leaps and an almost trance-like focus on creation. This is where the magic happens, where ordinary words transform into extraordinary art, imbued with a divine spark. However, like any powerful substance, the mead of poetry could also imply a fine line between inspired genius and genuine madness. The intensity of divine insight might overwhelm a mortal mind, leading to obsessive creation, erratic behavior, or even a breakdown of ordinary thought processes. The very nature of genius often flirts with such extremes, where the mind is so consumed by its vision that it appears detached from reality. The mead, by providing such potent inspiration, could thus be seen as both a blessing and a potential burden. Odin himself, the All-Father, embodies this duality. He is the god of wisdom and poetry, but also of ecstasy, frenzy, and berserker rage. He hangs himself on Yggdrasil to gain runic knowledge, sacrifices an eye for wisdom, and is often depicted as a wanderer, seeking knowledge at any cost. His association with the Mead of Poetry perfectly aligns with his own character, suggesting that profound insight and creativity often demand a certain sacrifice, a willingness to embrace the wilder, less rational aspects of the mind. The mead is a reflection of Odin's own complex nature. The sweet intoxication of creativity is the feeling of being utterly consumed by one's art, where time loses meaning and the act of creation becomes an all-encompassing experience. It is the joy of discovery, the thrill of bringing something new into existence, and the profound satisfaction of crafting words that resonate with truth and beauty. This state, while exhilarating, also demands immense energy and focus, drawing the poet deep into their own inner world, sometimes at the expense of external realities. Ultimately, the Mead of Poetry serves as a potent metaphor for the creative process itself. It highlights that true inspiration is not just a skill, but a profound, almost mystical experience that can transform the individual. It suggests that creativity, at its highest form, involves a temporary departure from the ordinary, an embrace of a heightened state of awareness that can feel both intoxicating and, at times, overwhelming. The Mead's legacy reminds us that art is a powerful force, capable of both elevating and challenging the human spirit. Part 7. The Poet's Legacy. How does the mead still flow today? The tale of the Mead of Poetry, though ancient, continues to resonate deeply in our understanding of creativity and inspiration. While we no longer believe in a literal magical brew stolen by Odin, the myth serves as a powerful metaphor for the elusive and often mysterious nature of artistic genius. It explains why some individuals seem to possess an innate ability to craft words, music, or images with profound impact, while others struggle for even a flicker of insight. The mead, in essence, symbolizes that spark of divine fire that ignites the creative spirit. Today, the mead flows through the inherent talent and dedication of artists, writers, musicians, and innovators across all fields. It represents the moments of epiphany, the sudden burst of clarity, and the sustained passion that drives creative work. When a writer finds the perfect phrase, a musician composes a haunting melody, or a scientist envisions a breakthrough, they are metaphorically partaking in the mead of poetry. It's the inexplicable force that transforms raw ideas into polished, impactful creations, giving them life and meaning beyond their initial conception. The legacy of the mead also speaks to the value society places on inspiration. We celebrate those who can articulate complex ideas, evoke deep emotions, and tell compelling stories. These individuals, whether poets, playwrights, or public speakers, are still seen as conduits for something greater than themselves, possessing a unique ability to tap into universal truths. Their words and works continue to influence and shape cultures, much as the Mead-inspired skalds influenced their communities in ancient times, guiding through narrative and song. Furthermore, the myth underlines the idea that creativity often comes at a cost, echoing Odin's daring theft and Gunnlod's heartbreak. Artists frequently speak of the sacrifices they make for their craft. Long hours, self-doubt, financial instability, and emotional vulnerability. The journey of creation can be arduous, demanding persistence and resilience. Much like Odin's perilous journey to acquire the mead, the rewards, however, are immeasurable. The joy of bringing something beautiful into the world, and the lasting impact it can have. The rhymester share also has its modern equivalent. It reminds us that not all creative output is equally profound or universally acclaimed. There are countless attempts at art and expression, some more successful than others, reflecting varying degrees of inspiration. This distinction acknowledges the spectrum of creative ability, from the technically competent to the truly transcendent, without diminishing the effort involved in any creative pursuit. It's a recognition that some artists simply tap into a purer, more concentrated source of their own internal mead. In its essence, the Mead of Poetry myth is a timeless exploration of where inspiration comes from and why it holds such power. It invites us to ponder the nature of genius, the source of compelling artistry, and the profound impact of well-crafted words. The story continues to remind us that creativity is a sacred, sometimes stolen, often challenging, but always vital force that shapes human experience and elevates our understanding of the world, a wellspring of wisdom that continues to flow through the ages.